So first things first, this is basically us kicking off the SQL DVD workload. So generating this OLTP class workload. This is the WAN simulator, so I'm going in and you can see that right now they're local. So this is now me pinging from one vSphere cluster to another vSphere cluster. And you can see that it's basically, you know, less than a millisecond. So they're literally, in effect, you know, kind of sitting beside one another, so to speak. So obviously the next thing that we've got to do is we've got to insert the latency to represent 200 kilometers. Now, in fact, this latency that we're adding actually represents, if you do the speed of light math, a greater distance. So if I put in, you know, 2.3 milliseconds, you know, kind of round trip latency, sorry, one-way latency, that's almost 5 milliseconds round trip latency. That actually corresponds by speed of light to almost like 500 kilometers, but usually you've got some switching gear in the middle and those sorts of things, so we want to be conservative. So now if I go and I do the same ping operation, you'll see, okay, whereas previously there were less than a millisecond between the two, you can see now that the same thing is basically showing 5 milliseconds, roughly corresponding with around 200 kilometers, assuming that you have some extra latency due to switching and other elements in the middle. So, first things first, we'll do the 1A variant, right? So the 1A variant is simple stretch network, and the virtual disks and VMDKs and VMX files stay at the original site. So, boom, we kick off the workload. Again, note, and we're going to emphasize this later, we're moving it between two separate vSphere clusters, right? So, you know, they're not actually in one cluster, they're in two, and we'll explain why later. And off it goes, operation starts, and through the magic of some time lapse, you can see that it basically took, you know, 1 minute and 38 seconds under this particular load over that distance. Still very, very good. That's basically the far right of the graph that you saw earlier, right? Now 1B is, okay, let's do the storage vMotion before vMotion step. Simple, out of the box, you can do this with just about anything. So step 1 is change the data stores. Again, vSphere's got this fantastic new GUI. We're using the change block tracking mechanism underneath the covers for storage vMotion, much faster, and supports all protocol types, right, from one to the other too. And again, this option here you could use with almost any array, and you could use it with both block and with NFS data stores. So here we're moving it from one data store to another, but the data stores are presented to the vSphere clusters on both sides. So, right? One is local and has very low latency. The other one is remote and has a higher latency. So, and by the way, the other thing you can do, of course, is you can actually change the virtual disk type as part of the process, which is extra groovy. At the end of this process, you know, if we take a look, by the way, that high priority, low priority actually doesn't do anything in storage vMotion, just as an FYI. So we're moving from the primary, that's where they sit right now, and through, again, the magic of time lapse, if we take a look at the timestamps, basically this took 15 minutes and 26 seconds. That's still very, very good, right? If you know something's coming and you can do this with enough time, this is a valid solution for many customers. Obviously, at very large scale, it would become a little more challenging, right? So this is now doing the active storage model. So underneath the covers, there's this scale-out model of presentation of storage across both sides. So we're moving from, we actually don't need to do a storage vMotion here, right? Because throughout that process, it's going to go from VMFS one side to VMFS on the other side, but they're actually the same data store from the vSphere cluster standpoint. And if we take a look at the timestamps on that process, you can see that it takes marginally longer, I think basically like an extra second, which is in the rounding error kind of range, to be able to do storage vMotion from one side to the other. Fast, simple, and easy. I think that this is just, we'll talk a little bit more around this, but this means that this can operate on a very, very large scale, and potentially as an option for cloud import and export as well.